It's me. Sorry. What does your foot look like?
Backwards.
This is the most horrifying and disturbing case I have ever heard. It was a warm summer evening in July 1995 when 13-year-old Thad Phillips and his family, his parents Connie and Donald and his little sister, were settling into their new home in Baraboo, Wisconsin. For Thad, it seemed like a perfect place for a fresh start. The town was small, the kind of place where kids could safely roam around outside, and families were close-knit. Life felt good, but it was about to change. That night, the Phillips family was watching TV together in their living room. Thad and his sister fell asleep on the couch, and their parents decided to let them rest as they finished the evening in another room. But in the middle of the night, something strange happened. Something that would send Thad down a terrifying path no one could have predicted. Thad felt someone pick him up. In his half-asleep state, he assumed it was his father, like so many times before.
Opened up my eyes a little bit, and I'm being carried through my den in our new house, and it's nothing really new to me because my mom and dad carried me to bed when I'd fall asleep before.
But as he woke up, something felt wrong. He wasn't being carried to his bedroom, he was being carried outside. It wasn't his father either. The figure holding him was a teenage boy, much older and bigger than him. This boy took Thad away from his home, down the street, and into another house nearby. Thad, still groggy and confused, followed along without resisting. The boy, who introduced himself as Joe, acted like everything was normal. He told Thad that they were going to hang out at his place. He even mentioned that other boys from the neighborhood would be coming over for a party soon. Thad, trusting the boy and recognizing some of the names he mentioned, went along with it. Little did he know, he had just been abducted by one of the most dangerous and twisted individuals he would ever encounter. Once inside, Joe invited Thad to check out his room upstairs. It looked like a typical teenage boy's room. Posters on the walls, car models, and scattered belongings. But then, without warning, everything changed. Joe's demeanor shifted from friendly to menacing in an instant. Without saying a word, Joe grabbed Thad's ankle and violently twisted it backward. The sound of bones snapping filled the room as Thad's ankle was shattered. The pain was instant and intense, but the shock was even worse. Thad could hardly process what was happening. Why had this boy, who seemed like a neighbor, just brutally attacked him? Thad's instincts kicked in. He knew he had to get out of there. Despite the pain in his broken ankle, he tried to escape. He ran down the stairs, but with his leg injured, he didn't get far. Joe quickly caught up with him and dragged him back into the house.
Kind of looked away, and as soon as he looked away, I got up and ran as fast as I could down the stairs. Can't run very fast with a broken ankle. But I got down the stairs and through his living room into the kitchen before he finally caught up to me and got behind me and put me in a hole, dragged me back into his living room.
This time, Joe was even more violent. He threw Thad onto the floor and attacked him with such force that he broke his femur and hip bone. The pain was unimaginable, and Thad soon blacked out. When Thad woke up, he was lying on Joe's couch. His legs were destroyed, swollen, and throbbing in pain. But Joe, sitting next to him, acted as though nothing had happened. In a disturbingly calm voice, Joe explained why he had done this to Thad. He liked breaking bones. He enjoyed the sound and sensation of snapping bones, and he seemed to take pleasure in watching his victims suffer. It wasn't personal, Joe claimed. It was just something he liked to do. At that moment, Thad realized he wasn't dealing with a normal person. Joe wasn't just a bully or an abductor. He was a sadistic monster. Despite the overwhelming pain and fear, Thad's mind remained sharp. He knew that if he didn't stay calm and think of a way out, he would die in that house. Thad decided to try and befriend Joe, playing along with his captor's twisted games. As Joe rambled on about his obsession with breaking bones, Thad listened carefully, trying to gain his trust. Thad asked Joe if he could call his parents to his surprise. Joe said sure, and even handed him the phone as Thad dialed their number and held the phone close to his ear, expecting it to ring. He heard Joe laughing in the background. He'd cut off the cord. If you thought Joe couldn't get more evil, but Dad was so intent on surviving the ordeal that he didn't even express his anger. He acted as if Joe's so-called joke was funny and tried to befriend him. He pretended to laugh at Joe's cruel jokes, all the while studying the house for any means of escape. The house was filthy, filled with old food, dirty clothes, and junk, but there was nothing useful in sight. No weapons, no functioning phone. Hours turned into days, and the torture continued. Over the next 2 days, Joe repeatedly attacked Thad, breaking more bones each time. Joe even took pride in his work, showing Thad his collection of leg braces, bandages, and other medical supplies. In Joe's twisted mind, the process of breaking bones and then trying to fix them was part of the game. He would obsessively wrap Thad's shattered legs in socks and braces, trying to stabilize the damage he had done, only to break the bones again later. Despite enduring unimaginable pain, Thad refused to give up. His will to live was stronger than the agony Joe inflicted upon him. Thad knew that if he didn't escape soon, he would die. Joe had already confessed to killing another boy, 14-year-old Chris Steiner, in a similar way the year before. Thad realized that he was living on borrowed time. While Thad was fighting for his life, his family was desperately searching for him. Connie and Donald Phillips quickly realized that something was wrong when Thad didn't return home. They drove around town, looking everywhere for their son, but found no trace of him.
We drove around and looked around. We went out to the river, and I searched the fairgrounds. Just never thought to check house to house, because we didn't know any of the neighbors right close, so if I would have probably found him before he was hurt as bad as he was.
The police were called, and a missing person report was filed, but with no immediate leads, the investigation stalled. All Connie and Donald could do was wait by the phone, praying for their son's safe return. Back at Joe's house, Thad knew that his time was running out. Joe had left him alone several times before, but now he had an opportunity. He planned to kill him soon, but Joe was also waiting for his girlfriend to arrive that evening. Thad, aware of this, tried to buy himself some time. As Joe prepared to torture him again, Thad stalled by insisting he could hear someone approaching, repeating, "I hear something, I hear something." Eventually, Joe's girlfriend did show up. To keep Thad hidden, Joe locked him inside a closet. By this point, the shattered bones in Thad's legs had caused severe internal bleeding, and he knew he was running out of time. The pain grew unbearable, and Thad realized he had only hours left to live. With death looming, he knew it was his last chance to escape. Desperately searching the closet, Thad spotted an old electric guitar. Summoning every ounce of strength, he smashed it against the closet door.
Busted a panel off the door and was able to unlock.
Thad dragged his broken body down the hallway and threw himself down the stairs, passing out from the pain but refusing to give up. After regaining consciousness, he continued his crawl to the kitchen, where he found a phone mounted on the wall. He tugged at the cord until the phone fell within reach. Fortunately, the buttons were on the receiver, and Thad dialed 911. When the 911 operator answered, they were shocked by how calm Thad sounded, given the horrific circumstances.
Police! Dad?
We're here, it's me.
Sorry.
I can't believe the kid busted out of there. Can't believe he's still alive.
Police officers were dispatched to Joe's house, and what they found was beyond anything they had expected. Thad was barely alive. His legs were grotesquely swollen, and his body was covered in bruises. His bones had been shattered to the point where doctors later said he had only an hour or two left to live if he hadn't been rescued. Thad was rushed to the hospital, where surgeons worked to repair the extensive damage to his body. Despite the trauma he had endured, Thad remained focused on one thing: making sure Joe Clark was brought to justice. He immediately told the police everything he knew about Joe, including his confession to the murder of Chris Steiner. As police investigated further, they found that Joe Clark had a history of violent behavior. Known as a bully around town, Joe had long harbored a fascination with breaking bones, but no one had suspected just how dangerous he was. In Joe's room, investigators found lists of potential future victims, along with detailed plans of how he would kidnap and torture them. Joe had even kept a sickening to-do list that included ways to keep his victims alive just long enough to prolong their suffering. Joe was arrested and charged with multiple crimes, including the murder of Chris Steiner and the kidnapping and torture of Thad Phillips. During his trial, Joe's defense team tried to claim that he was mentally ill and didn't remember his actions. But the evidence was overwhelming. Thad bravely testified against Joe, recounting the horrific abuse he had suffered.
And what did your foot look like? Backwards.
In the end, Joe Clark was convicted and sentenced to life in prison plus 100 years. The small town of Baraboo could finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that a sadistic killer was behind bars for good. Thad Phillips survived one of the most brutal and horrifying ordeals imaginable. His will to live, his bravery in the face of death, and his intelligence in outsmarting his captor saved his life and helped bring a killer to justice. Today, Thad is a father and a survivor.